So I just want to welcome everybody today. My name is Molly Duche, and we have a wonderful panel ahead of us to talk about the maritime workforce pathways, specifically with many women who are currently in the industry. So before we kick it off, I want to pass it to Carleen Leiden-Walker to say a few opening words.
Good afternoon, everyone. And we are really excited at the interest and the energy involved in this workshop. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of NMEPA, the North American Marine Environment Protection Association. Half of what we do is about education, and half of that is about workforce development and how do we bring people into our industry. And every time we have a MPSEC, Maritime Primary and Secondary Education Coalition event, I always quote a man who became a mentor, a friend, and a guiding light when it comes to workforce development. And that was Congressman Elijah Cummings. He once spoke for me at a maritime education conference, and he said, if they can't see it, they can't dream it. The maritime industry offers an incredible career pathway and an education pathway. And we're hoping that many of you today will learn more about this industry, what you didn't know about an industry that transports more than 90% of the world's goods and energy and is truly the engine of global trade. So I'm going to turn it back to Molly.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carleen. And so just a few housekeeping reminders. If you could just remain on mute. I know things happen. Some of us come off mute or on mute, but just mute yourselves throughout the webinar. We will have a chance for Q&A at the end where you can raise your hand. You can just join in and we can feel free to ask any questions to our panelists. Again, this will be recorded and a link will be provided through the email. If you're not on our subscription list, I will put the link in the chat once we get going, just so you can sign up at any time. So just to reiterate, for those of you who are unfamiliar with MPSEC, MPSEC stands for the Maritime Primary and Secondary Education Coalition. And really our ultimate goal is to foster the development of maritime education in both our nation's primary and secondary schools. And we do this work with numerous groups, numerous partners through local, state, federal agencies. We have maritime associations, academic institutions, and other stakeholders, frankly. So if you have any resources that you want to share, if you are an academic institution, if you're a private employer, if you're a federal agency, if you're MARAD, if you have resources that you want to share, I will also put the link in here. Send them our way. We would love to put them up. If you have an event coming up, your school, open house, anything like that that reaches the hands of students in the maritime community, by all means, we would love it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. So my name is Molly Duche. As Carleen mentioned, I work with NMEPA, the North American Marine Environment Protection Association. So I am our Education and Outreach Director. I am also a high school science teacher. And joining us today, we have our keynote, Captain Jennifer Norwood. We have Tia Lehman joining us, Megan Riley, and Colleen Weir. I don't want to necessarily introduce them because that's what this whole webinar is about today and how they got to the places they are now. So I am going to pass it off to Captain Norwood, and I'm going to stop showing my screen so we can see her on all of our screens. So, and Captain Norwood, you can take it away.
Thank you, Molly. I appreciate you having me here today, and I'm really honored and humble to be a part of this panel and be your keynote speaker. A little bit about myself. I am an unlimited master mariner. I have sailed as master for the last 5 years of my career when I retired in 2012. After that, I had a little bit of time home doing a stint as caretaker for my mother before joining Maine Maritime Academy, and I started there working with the engineering group all the way up through until I became associate professor in the marine transportation department. And then I left there in probably last fall, actually, when I started my PhD in leadership studies. Just the work that we did with the students during the pandemic, their needs, and then the needs of managing a PhD, plus all the other things that I was doing. There had to be something that kind of had to give. So I wanted to take a break from academia so I could focus on my PhD. At my time with Maine Maritime, I started a program with SailPlan, who is my current employer. SailPlan, we started working on autonomous vessel technology research together. I had already been working in that field, and through that, we created the partnership with Maine Maritime to bring that technology to the students. I'm very passionate about my students. I'm passionate about mentoring and coaching. It's really one of the things that really is rewarding and drives me, but it also helps me support the younger generation who want to enter the industry. And so, in my time in that, we developed a partnership over 2 years. And then, when I decided to leave Maine Maritime to focus on my PhD, the opportunity came to be a part of the startup as an executive, as head of customer success. And it was just kind of one of those too good of an opportunity to turn down. And I'd been a part of the company from really the inset, as a partner from a Maine Maritime perspective. So, so now I'm currently there, and we're 2 years in, and our company does real-time emissions monitoring for ships and ports. We put hardware into the onboard the vessels to actually measure the emissions, plus other capabilities of the vessel, and we display that to our customers. We help them to establish that baseline, and then from there, we help them optimize. And then after we've optimized their engines, we provide them one-click reporting across their fleet so that they can easily report their greenhouse gas emissions across their fleet. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity to be working with a startup. It's both a maritime industry and a tech industry. So I'm really passionate about technology and innovation. I think it's incredibly important to bring that to our students and incredibly important to bring that to our mariners. So, to step backwards a little bit, though, how did I get started in this industry? Well, to be quite honest, I fell into it. I had no idea that there were maritime academies out there. I got invited to see Texas Maritime Academy through my high school. They sent me a notice. I was interested sort of in the marine sciences, and really my only goal was to get to a university that had the ocean close by. That was like the primary goal. And then the next goal was to finish. So when I visited the campus, I took a tour of the vessel. I was just struck. I was like, wow, there's a whole industry out here I didn't even know about. And I didn't have the benefit of the internet. I didn't have the benefit of just reaching out. Everything had to be done sort of research on your own. I feel in our education for our students, K through 12, we don't do a very good job of really helping them find those opportunities that are unique. And so for me, I've landed in it. After my 4 years there, I was ready to go to sea, and I came out in 99, 98, and the bottom fell out of shipping, so there were no ships. I spent about 2 years working shoreside before applying to the offshore maritime industry. I did a small stint on Maersk Line Limited with the union, but I really wasn't, I was bored out of my mind. So I started working with Global Marine in 1999 as a ballast control operator. And as the only female on board, especially in an officer role, I was kind of being pigeonholed in there. And I got passed over several times as because they didn't want me to go on deck. They were afraid. They were like, well, what will happen if she goes on deck? What if I have to, give her a tough talking to? She's going to cry. And I said, well, you might think that, and I'm not going to cry. I might do that later in my own room by myself, but I'm not going to do that for you. And one of the things when it came about, they said, well, we asked you what you wanted to do when you joined. And I said, I wanted to get my master's license. That was my goal. I never really kind of shot for the idea of sailing as master, but I had my goal out there of master and getting that license. And really, if anybody who knows me, I'm a very driven, motivated person. Once I have the goal out there, I'm going to achieve it. And so I don't give up on my goal. And so in saying that, I had to self-advocate for myself. I contacted the office. I said, if this is all you have for me as a ballast control operator, there's more out there for me, and I'll be happy to go and find it. If you have something available, then I'd be interested in it. But otherwise, I'm not going to stay here. I just can't do it. I was kind of losing my mind. Um, so the and I actually went straight to HR because I had tried other avenues, speaking with my own supervisors, and just couldn't get that opportunity. They wanted to keep me there because I was good, and it was sort of a sickness in the industries. If you're really good at something, you can get pigeonholed in it, and it's really up to you to push back and make sure you pass that boundary back out and work hard to get what you want. So I did, and he said, well, when are you getting your second mate's license? I said, my next time off. He said, you get that, and I'll get you promoted to the drill ship on the Jack Ryan. And sort of from there, that kind of blossomed my career. A couple things that really helped me be successful, though, was the mentors that I had. And one of my mentors that I had was my chief mate. Unfortunately, he's not with us. He had a diving accident, and he passed away just before he took command as master. He'd already sailed as master, but I had great admiration for somebody who was willing to step back into a chief mate role just so he could be on a dynamic position vessel and learn the vessel. And so he pulled me aside and said to me, you are talking really blunt and it's not working for you. And I said, yeah, but this is a direct and blunt industry. And he said, yes, but most of your demographic are Southern males, and their wives don't talk to them that way. Their girlfriends don't talk to them that way. Their daughters don't. So it's not working for you. You need to find a softer approach. So that was his first piece of advice. His second piece of advice is just remember, when you're holding expectations for people, you have them way up here, and their expectations for themselves is about here. So get them here first before you can get them there. He said, not everybody's going to be driven and motivated like you are, and you have to be a little bit easier on them. You have to create the pathway. And that was really my first, eye-opening experience to the journey of what I would say is leadership. I didn't really think about it. I thought I just had to work hard and I'd get noticed. I didn't really recognize the barriers of being a female in a very male-dominated industry. And so that was a huge lesson to me that really opened my eyes and helped me become a better leader. It helped me become a better manager and really develop sort of a servant style leadership. And so that was really important to me. And as my career progressed, I had two other allies, both in captains, who gave me the opportunity when it came open. The most important aspect is move your license. The money will come, the position will come. But if you don't have the license, you can't be considered. So I moved my license when the opportunity came open. Again, I was the only one with the license available, so I had gotten that opportunity. I never thought that by 2007 I'd be sailing as master. I was the first female offshore master and offshore installation manager in the drilling industry worldwide for Global Santa Fe. I also had another first after the merger with Transocean. I left Transocean and went to Maersk Drilling, and I became their first female OIM. I also became their first American to sail on an EU vessel, or a Danish flagged vessel. Was typically reserved for only EU citizens. So, for me, the industry has so many opportunities, and you can change and chart your course any way you want, just simply by reaching out and seeing what those opportunities are. I mean, when we talk about the maritime industry, we're talking about the supply chain from the start all the way to the end. And that's everything from business to trading to shipping to engineering. There's so many opportunities, and the innovations today in the industry are going to draw more people. As an industry, we need to get better at making sure everybody can see us in a positive light, to know it's a route. And there's a organization that's doing great work, Women Offshore, who's really reaching out to females and minorities to really introduce them to the industry and introduce them to mentors within the organization, and across the board professionals that are helping touch and reach out and let other women, other minorities know these opportunities are there. But these aren't just for women, these are also for male students. And when we look at the younger generation, everybody's like, I don't really know what I want to do. And I said, well, the first steps are figuring out what you don't like. And when you know what you don't like, then you know how you can start moving your path. But I would say is also give your organization that you work with, if you believe in the values that they have and you want to stay with them, give them the opportunity to have that discussion if you feel like you're pigeonholed in one position or another and you're ready to sort of explore other options. A lot of times we don't give that opportunity to our organizations and we already have got the next job and are walking out the door before we've actually given them that opportunity to say, hey, let's figure out what your path looks like. Most companies are not very good at charting the next career path or succession for you as a person. And this is not just maritime related, it's all of them. So you have to be your own self advocate and have to be willing to also open the door and have those conversations. So with that, I'm excited to hear about the questions for the panel we have. We have an amazing young group of professional women who are joining us, who have their own experiences to share, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much, Molly, for having me, and I'll definitely be interested in hearing any questions that anybody has.
Awesome. And so before we dive into the questions, we're actually going to introduce the panel. We have some guided questions already, but you can feel free to type any questions you may have in the chat. This is kind of meant to be more of like a discussion with our panelists to see their pathways and really how they got into the positions they are now. So the first thing I want to do is have our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll start with Megan, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Riley. I am currently an Education and Outreach Associate with NMEPA, but I am also working as the Director of School Programs at the Cape Cod Maritime Museum, where I run a marine science summer camp in the summer that the museum offers. And I just graduated from Mass Maritime in this past June of 2022.
Awesome. And then we will go ahead to Colleen.
Hi, my name is Colleen Weir. I'm a third engineer for Transocean, and I also graduated this past June from Mass Maritime.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then we'll also introduce Tia.
Hi there, my name is Tia Lehman. I'm a graduate from Great Lakes Maritime Academy with my third assistant engineers. I worked research ships right after school, and then I decided to go to the MEBA union and sail deep sea for a while. So I currently just accepted a permanent position with OSG on their West Coast oil tanker.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Okay, so one of the first questions we have is, as either a high school or college student, what were your career aspirations? And then when or how did it change? So Megan, if you want to start off with that for us.
Sure. So similar to Jennifer, I fell into the maritime industry completely on accident. I knew I wanted to do marine biology, but I was actually stuck on the Bourne Rotary going to summer vacation on the Cape where I saw Mass Maritime, and my dad was like, let's go take a tour. And I was like, no, not really feeling, maritime. I had seen SUNY, wasn't really about the regiment. And then I went to Mass Maritime, took a tour, and absolutely fell in love. And then spent 2 weeks in Bermuda my freshman year doing an ecological study of the island. And that really solidified the fact that I wanted to do marine biology and I wanted to work in the maritime field. But I took an internship with the MEPA this past winter, and then that's when I found my love for educating about the marine industry and combining both the conservation and the maritime industry together, because they have to work together for everything to work.
Awesome. And Colleen, go ahead.
So when I was in high school, Mass Maritime has the Sea Science Leadership Program, and so it's for high school students to go and experience what the school is like. And my dad encouraged me to go to it. He was like, just give it a try. If you don't like it, you don't have to go back. So I went to that and I really enjoyed it. I really liked seeing all the labs in the ship and all the hands-on experience that all the classes had. So that's what kind of drew me to the school. I'm a very hands-on learner, not very I can't really just read a book and understand it. So that kind of got me started into the maritime field. And then once I went on my first C term, I knew that I loved being in the engine room, and actually seeing how things worked. And then I did an internship with a container ship company, and I really liked that. But I found the oil field very interesting because it's something we don't learn about at school. So I figured there was more opportunity to learn new things if I went into a field that I hadn't already researched. So through an internship. So I decided to pursue that for my career.
Awesome. And then Tia, what about you? What were your career aspirations and how and when did they really change?
Well, I grew up in South Florida, and it's a very marine diverse, and it's a huge industry down here in all aspects. Maritime is very prominent. And so the high school that I went to was a marine biology high school, and I first started in marine science, and I knew that I wanted to do something in marine biology, research, something like that. And then a wonderful coordinator there, Ted Davis, he had said, well, hey, there's this tall ship in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I think you'd be really interested in doing this. And they were doing a college science program. And I said, well, that sounds pretty cool. Who doesn't want to sail on a historic tall ship? And so I went there one summer and absolutely fell in love with it. And I was like, oh, well, I kind of want to start sailing. Like I would rather, create a career in this aspect. And so I came back for 2 summers and met a lot of the crew on board who had graduated from maritime academies. And I went and saw all of the schools, and I decided on Great Lakes in Traverse City, Michigan, and knew immediately that this was the place I needed to be, that this was exactly what I wanted. And I chose engineering because I love being able to figure things out with my hands, see point A, B, and C, and troubleshoot. And then once in college, I really wanted to see the parts of the industry that I knew would be more difficult to see out of school. So I sailed with Norwegian Cruise Lines on their Pride of America cruise ship, and then I sailed harbor assist tugboats in Galveston and Houston. And then I worked at a naval shipyard in San Diego, working on different military class ships. And then I figured after college, I was like, well, okay, I don't really know what I want to do now. I know I love so many different facets of the industry. So I said, well, who would love to combine my love for science and research, and I want to make a difference, want to do something greater than myself. And so I worked for Oregon State University on their RV Oceanus, which has just been decommissioned, sadly. But I went and worked for them for a while, and then I had always known since being in the industry that I wanted to work on the Thomas G. Thompson. And then a friend tipped me off that they needed a third engineer. And so I was in the middle of vacation in Massachusetts with family friends. And I was like, I need to get this job right now. I'll do whatever it takes to get this job. And so I ended up sailing with them down to Hawaii and a little bit south, doing some different missions down there. And then I ended up with the Union, and it was a weird turn of events that I think in this industry, it's very hard to say, this is exactly what I want to do, because you keep seeing all of these wonderful opportunities that you had no idea existed. And then you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll just try this one. I guess I'll try this one. So now the current transition I'm in is trying out oil and chemical tankers.
Perfect. So, one thing that you mentioned, Tia, too, is coming up into your current role now. And I know some people are definitely going to be curious about this, especially as Captain Norwood pointed out, being a woman in maritime. What were some of the obstacles that you may have encountered along the way? And Colleen, if you wanted to kick us off with that.
Some of the obstacles is you have to kind of get used to always being around a lot of guys. It's something that you even if you hang out with like a lot of guys at school, it's very different when you walk on. Like when I went on to my internship, I was the only female on the ship. And so it's definitely something you have to get used to, and you have to get used to making sure that they're looking at you like taking you seriously, because sometimes you'll notice like they'll kind of underestimate your abilities and what you can do and what you know. And so you kind of have to prove yourself a little bit more, it feels like sometimes.
And Tia, what about you? What has been something difficult for you along your pathway?
I would say very blatantly the biggest obstacle that I've had to and still always overcoming is how people refer to as imposter syndrome, where you kind of feel like, how in the world did I get here? I mean, I graduated at 21, and then all of a sudden I was thrust into these very big roles that I felt like were way too big for me. And so a lot of it was coming into your own and realizing like, okay, I did the work. I'm not fooling anyone. I'm here because I did the work and have the experience. And I mean, you can't fake tests. You can't do any of that. And so a big thing for me was realizing that, okay, I am fully confident in myself to perform this job. And if there's something that I don't know, I'm not expected to know everything. That's why we're out here. And that it's okay to constantly be on your learning journey throughout your whole career.
I like that, being on your learning journey. So you're constantly growing as you reach each milestone. And I always say, even to my students, every win is a win, no matter how big or small. So that's awesome. And Captain Road will join you in on this one too. What has been the most rewarding experience so far in your journey? Whether it's graduations, maybe it was becoming the first woman for so many of your different feats that you have. What is something that has been the most rewarding experience or opportunity that you've been given?
Well, actually, the first and most rewarding one was building my own team. They were a diverse group. I had a Croatian bosun. I had Trinidadian ABs. I had British deck pushers or crane operators, and I had to bring them together with this different cultural boundaries. And then I had to work with them as a woman, and you know, they never once questioned me as a woman. They just looked at me as the chief, and I was on the deck with them every day, showing them every step of the way, turning it over to them, and then letting them run it. And then I would come down, several months later, I remember just coming down to the deck saying, "Hey, what's going on?" And the bosun's like, "We don't need you here. We've got it." I said, "I know you have it. I just want to see what's going on. I just need to get out of the office." And so knowing I built that team, and they were such a close-knit team that took care of each other, and they had each other's back, and they looked out for each other, and they came from other cultures, was really rewarding. That was my very first really rewarding experience. My next really, really rewarding experience that I really felt like I was giving back was when I was teaching at Maritime Academy, because that put me right in my groove of mentoring and coaching and guiding. And, when I started, I told them I'm not an engineer, but I'm here to support your journey as students. And so I've mentored them on every level of student, engineers, dechies, all across, on what does it look like when I'm going out for that next job or that next role or that next position. And to Colleen's point, I used to teach an offshore technology course because the students are interested in that. But the mentoring piece of working with students, I worked as the faculty advisor on Women on the Water, and we introduced autonomous vessel technology to them, and that opened their mind to the possibilities that are out there. So to me, it's really that mentoring piece, whether you're building your own team or you're mentoring your students. There's such a reward in the give back because they let you know that you've made an impact. You don't have to do anything except show up for them and listen and provide that guidance that they're asking for. But the most important is treating them as a peer, as an equal, not as inferior to you, not as a subordinate, but as a peer, because they're young adults looking, and they're hungry for people to be there to stand beside them and to support them. So I would say those were really the two biggest rewards when I think back of my career. I mean, it was great being the first female woman, but I didn't even see that. I saw it later, really towards this part of my career than back then. I knew it was an amazing feat, but I didn't really think about it that way. I just thought I was here as a captain. So it's more of the team building and the mentoring of my students that really have been the most rewarding.
Awesome. And then Megan, what about you? What has been the most rewarding so far, besides working with me?
That is definitely. And then traveling also with NMEPA to Houston for the Marine Operations Conference, I was able to speak with 4 different high schools, reaching over 100 students, talking about the maritime industry, talking about the possibilities, because a lot of them didn't realize that there's a whole other side to the logistics of the maritime industry. Everyone saw it coming from the port and then going out into the country, but they didn't see that the things come from ships from there. And then one of my other most rewarding experiences was last summer. We did a program at the Cape Cod Maritime Museum where we had a group of students from a local school district come to the museum and do some programs. And these were students who had lived on the Cape their entire lives. And one girl looked at me and told me she had never touched the ocean before in her entire life. She'd lived on the Cape, which is basically an island surrounded by water, had never been to the beach. And we were able to give her an opportunity to go on a boat, and I took her down to the dock and I was like, you can touch it and you can reach your hand. And she was there for 15 minutes with the biggest smile on her face that she'd ever had, splashing in the water, kind of exploring something that she had never gotten the opportunity to explore. And so giving students the knowledge that there's a whole other workforce, that there's a whole other opportunity for them out there is super rewarding. And then to have them learn about this and to see the connections that they make on their own by just giving them such small pieces of information, and working with great organizations like NMEPA and the museum to provide those little pieces of information and get the education out there, that there is something else and that there is more to do, and that it's a growing industry, it's a growing workforce, that there are so many opportunities for them. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, how much knowledge you have, that you can be a part of it and you can work your way up to the top.
I love that. And Colleen, what about you? What's been something super rewarding, whether it was an experience, a lesson?
Something that's been very rewarding to me, actually happened before I even graduated. When we go on C term as a senior, you're in charge of the underclassmen, and some of them came to me with questions, and they were like, "Oh, can you explain this to me?" And when we were in the engine room, and getting to show them the things that I had learned and help them out, and have them finally make that like connection of how certain things worked, and then some of them even have reached out to me. Like last week, I got a message from one of them, and they said, "Oh, like I have some questions on my homework. I know like you're not in school anymore, but do you mind helping me out?" And I'm like, "Oh, of course." So I was helping them, and the fact that they trusted me and so much to come to me even when I'm not at school and ask for help on their engineering homework, since I had taken those classes and stuff, I thought that was really rewarding.
I agree. It always feels good to feel people come to you to seek out your expertise. And it means a lot when time has passed and they still come to you because they feel that relationship with you. They feel close to you, and they know they can ask you for help, which is always great. And Tia, what about you? What was an experience that was rewarding for you? And then also, I know you mentioned Ted Davis, who is on our editorial board here with MPSEC. And I want to ask immediately after your rewarding experience, about mentorship, because it seems like you had an experience with Ted in that regard. How has a mentor helped you? What's a lesson you may have learned? How did it help in that experience?
Okay, yeah, great. I think in terms of my actual work, I think right now the most rewarding thing is through being an MEBA that I can fully broaden my horizons with. As a third, it's not really common for you to get to take a permanent job somewhere, and everyone has pretty mixed reviews on that. But I think it's very rewarding that I have a fabulous crew who takes the time to, if I don't understand something, explain it to me. We all help each other. We have a fantastic work environment. I've been on ships where the work environment is pretty less than good. And so I've learned that if the work is rewarding and you feel yourself constantly being challenged, and you have a fantastic crew to really hold that above everything else, because sometimes that can be really hard to come by. And so I find that really rewarding. And being in the union, that when the time comes and I'm ready to explore maybe container ships or ferries or anything really, that the opportunity is there. And in terms of personally, I think throughout my career, the most rewarding thing has really been, as I said, I started on a tall ship, and to this day, that was the most rewarding, incredible thing that I've ever done. And the people that I met there, are still my best friends. It's incredible to be able to find people who one of them has an arts degree, the other one has a master's in physics. You all are coming together in completely different circumstances and coming together to do this one thing. And that's what drew me to research in the first place after college, was that you get to sail with so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and it's constantly changing and revolving. And it's really incredible to just constantly be kind of what's the word, like challenging yourself to see something more than you see in, right now the ship I work on has 23 people on it, and I see the same 23 people for 3 months. And so it's very different, but yeah, just the people that you get to meet along the way.
Awesome. And so, Captain Norwood, you mentioned again a lot about mentorship, how much it means. So between Megan, Colleen, and Tia, what is maybe a lesson you have learned from a mentor, or something that has stuck with you throughout your journey so far? It could have been a teacher, a professor. It could have been someone on your experiences on ships in the maritime industry. And Colleen, if you wanted to say for you.
So what I've learned the most from all my mentors is that it's okay to admit that you don't know something. And that if you're willing to say, I don't know how to do this, I need help, people are more willing to help you than if you pretend you know what you're doing and then you mess it up and you can't admit that you were wrong.
Awesome. And Megan, what about you?
I think the best piece of advice and the thing that I've learned from my mentors is ask those questions and kind of just absorb, be like a sponge, especially when if you're going through college or when you're first going through whatever workforce or job that you're in, just be a sponge and learn as much as you can from everyone around you, because what's so great about being out in the workforce is it brings people together that may not be brought together originally. And I think that's something you can learn from a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds. And so just absorbing everything and being a sponge.
And Tia, what about you?
I absolutely, first and foremost, agree with both Colleen and Megan said. Like, don't be afraid to ask the questions. You may think it's a dumb question, but they've definitely heard worse. And it'll just help you in your career. But my first engineer on the Pride of America would always tell me, he would say, pay attention to the details. He's like, just don't overlook any, especially in engineering. Keep paying attention to the details, write things down. I create a list and I keep a notebook with me all the time, creating itemized lists every day of everything I have to do and everything I want to do and my goals for the day. And so it's really important to stay away from complacency as much as possible and maintain attention to detail when you're on board, because it's a working environment. There's a lot that can go wrong.
Perfect. And so that leads us to Captain Norwood, as someone who's very much a mentor. And I see someone put a question very similar in the chat. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting out on exploring a career in the maritime, or is just ready to join the industry post-graduation?
Well, my advice would be is first, do some research. Like, actually just Google what the maritime industry is. What are all the parts? So you can kind of have a little bit of working knowledge. So start there, and that's going to lead you to the different types of organizations that are working in the industry, and that have openings. But really, it's kind of starting with that first step. What is the maritime industry? We have I think it was mentioned that everything comes on shore and everybody sees it leave the port and go on trucks and go on trains, and then before you know it, it's in your store. but all the shipping between happens. There's everything from imports to exports to, you know, being a freight forwarder to handling cargo to making sure you deliver supplies to the vessels when they come into port, to cruise lines, to ferries, to oil rigs, to tankers. It's so big. And there's enough space in the industry for anybody who's really interested in it. So my first step would be is, you know, look at the industry and what you might be interested in. And if you're not sure, go to a port, see what it does. See what's happening around you. If you're not living by a coast, there's a lot of maritime activity that's happening that's not just on big ships, that are in and around these ports, that are in communities that people don't even realize they're there. So I would start with that. The next thing I would do is seek out a mentor. There's a lot of organizations associated with the industry that have mentorship programs. You know, the other thing is don't be afraid to reach out to somebody on LinkedIn who is in the industry. You'd be surprised how many people are receptive when you're saying, "Hey, I'm looking to enter into this industry. How do I start? What advice do you have? I'm interested in your company. Can you tell me a little bit about it?" You know, the other piece that you could do is if you're looking at a licensed position and you're a US, you can go on to the US Coast Guard website for the merchant mariner credential, and you can actually start out as, you know, you could do it as a food handler or as a oiler or as a ordinary seaman, and a lot of the unions will pick you up very easily. So look into the different unions, but there's a place really for everybody in the oil and gas industry. You can totally check out going offshore through, you know, the entry level there is roustabout. There's also some contractors that work food service out there, just so you can see what it's like to be out on a vessel. So it's plentiful. I would start first to, you know, open that door. I'm on LinkedIn, so please, you know, you can reach out to me, and I'd happily help you. You know, what steps? Because the first thing we would do is establish that conversation. What are you interested in? What do you know about it? What don't you know about it? And how do we get started? But by all means, the first is do research on the industry, like what is maritime, and then start looking for that mentor.
And I have to say, from my own perspective, while Carlene may not realize that she's been my mentor, she has been my mentor. And I've been with Carlene now for 4 years under NMEPA. And just like you said, Jennifer, and as many of you guys mentioned, I fell into maritime unexpectedly, but like Megan, also in the marine sciences. And it is so big, and there is so much. And we always talk all the time about how large it is, to the point that I actually just met Captain Norwood last week at the Shipping Insight Conference. And through networking, through Captain Steve Baumgardner, I connected with Captain Norwood. And right away, she said she would love to be a part of this panel. So now we're LinkedIn connections. We've been sharing everything about this webinar. So really, there are so many people in the industry who are willing to help you, to guide you. The industry is just growing. It's if COVID really taught us anything, and Carlene loves to use these words, and I hammer them into my brain, it's the value proposition of the maritime industry. It cannot be overstated or understated, right? So these seafarers, the mariners, they're the lifeblood of our workforce. And everything we can do along the way to help them, to spotlight them, the great work that's being done on vessels, the best practices that come along the way. I know Captain Norwood's working with greenhouse gases and data, and how do we use that data effectively. These are all not just things specific to maritime, but they incorporate, you know, technology, digitalization, cybersecurity. Piracy is still very much a thing in the world. And there's so much at play that there is the opportunity to bring in so many diverse skills. So with that, does anybody have any oh, I saw you have any comment
Yep.
to make, Captain Norwood? Yeah.
Yep. I just want to make one comment too, is don't get discouraged if you reach out to somebody and they don't respond back, or you don't get a positive answer. Do not let anybody take away what you're looking to do. And it's the same for women, men, all of us in the industry. You know, there's people out there who want to strip away your own talent, what you bring to the table. Don't let anybody take that away. You've earned where you're at. Always look forward. Don't be looking back. And certainly don't get discouraged if somebody doesn't connect with you. They may be incredibly busy. So don't take that personally. Just keep going. Go to the next person and then move on to the next person. And because their mentors are out there and they want to grow the industry, and the industry is changing so much. We're going to need more people who want to be a part of it.
Awesome. And I see, Carlene, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on what you were just saying. Last week at Shipping Insight, the CEO of one of the largest tanker companies in the world held a networking breakfast. She was the guest at a networking breakfast. And she grew up on a farm in Iowa. And she sort of fell into going to a maritime academy. But all along the way, people said, oh, a woman will never be this, and a woman will never be this, and a woman will never be this. And her advice was stay the course, because people that tell you, no, you can't, if you feel within yourself, yes, you can, then just stay the course and keep at it, because there are wonderful opportunities and pathways. And the other thing, at least in my career, back when I started out, I never would have envisioned what I'm doing today. And I couldn't be more delighted. And every piece of what I've done, whether it was working for an accounting firm or working for an advertising agency, it all led to where I am today. So everything is a brick in your experience, which will be your career. So whenever you feel that you've hit a wall, go around it, because you will achieve your dream and share your passion with others.
Thank you for that, Carlene. And does anybody else have any Q&A, any questions? And to our panel too, I think one of the key questions that I wanted to ask everyone while we see if any questions come in through the chat is, where do you see your career taking you? So from your position now, whether your position next year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, where do you see yourself? How do you see yourself growing? New knowledge, what are your plans? Maybe you're already working on some of those now. Where do you see yourself? And so Megan, we'll actually start with you.
I see myself sticking in education. I've absolutely loved working with kids. I've worked with kids my entire life. And so to find an area that combines two of the things that I love the most, education, marine biology, the maritime industry, and to combine that. So working with kids and educating them about the maritime industry, and also just educating the general public, because there's so much that isn't known about what the industry does, that it's not just about the kids. Adults need the education too. So educating everyone that I possibly can about the incredible work that is being done in the industry, in marine biology, and just combining everything together. So definitely sticking with education.
Awesome. I can't wait because you're with me forever. And Colleen, what about you?
I'm not going anywhere.
I think my plan is to just work my way up to eventually become like a second engineer, first engineer, through there. But honestly, I'm very open to wherever the job takes me and whatever's next, because I don't really have a full plan yet. I'm just kind of taking it as it comes and seeing what opportunities arise.
Awesome. And Tia, what about you?
As far as short-term goals, I'm hoping to start sailing under my second engineer's license soon. And it's long-term. I definitely want to just keep kind of how Jennifer stated, was that the main advice that I always got was, you're never going to think you're ready. Just get the next license. Just get it. And then you'll be ready once you're in the position. Like, there's no way, if you can meditate it on it all you want, but sometimes you just have to go out and do it. And so that's kind of the mentality that I'm taking now, is take in as much knowledge as I can and then just do it. And so, because I didn't think I would want to sail under my seconds for a while. and then eventually just go to first in chief. And then I would really love long term to enter some kind of teaching role, whether it be at a maritime academy or some kind of secondary learning facility or anything like that. Just teach engineering and reach as many people and young women specifically as possible, because it's this industry is moving forward, but it only moves forward as long as we do. And so I want to make it a better industry, STEM in general, for future generations to come.
I love that. And Jennifer, what about you? Where do you think your career is going to take you?
Gosh, I don't know at this point in my career, because I've achieved all the goals. Really right now my focus is on my PhD, because I feel like long term eventually I'll be back in teaching. But I want to expand on my teaching to really incorporate innovation, but also behaviors, and really help people grow as a leader from a much younger age. I don't think we spend enough time on that. And teaching them. And I think it's really important to sort of help them develop those skills much earlier on, because I think overall it will be a much more balanced industry and experience for everybody as you start to develop your own. I would imagine when you first come out of school, you're like, what do I do now? And I have to work hard. And then you don't realize, as your experiences are growing you as a leader, as well as your mentors or your allies who are giving you that advice, you're starting to develop those things. But when you get it wrong, are you evaluating what went wrong? What was that wrong step with the conversation? So usually when I have a conversation with everybody and I walk away and it didn't go as I thought it should, I'm always replaying in my mind and reviewing it and saying, what could I have done differently? How could I have approached it differently? And I think those are skills that are needed to make sure that we can grow the diversity and also make it inclusive for everybody, is putting everybody on sort of a playing level field, and understanding that really we have to come from a place of kindness and support always. And we always need to be lifting other people up. And I always said to my students, I always said to my crew members, you want that next position, teach the person below you, and then learn, your position, and be learning the one above you, supporting that next person above you. Because I can promise you, is if that person moves out and you want to go, but you've never taught anybody behind you, there's a chance you might not leave your position because they can't afford to lose you. So if you're always kind of thinking that way and bringing people along with you, you can go to bed at night knowing that you've done for others as others have done for you.
Thank you for that. And then, so I do see, let's see, I think it was Captain Alexander, you had your hand raised. I don't know if you still had a question or not. You can come on, head off mute. We can't hear you, so if you wanted to unmute yourself in the top right-hand corner. You can also, if you click on the chat, you could also type it into the chat if you have a question. So I don't think we're able to hear you. I did see that Art Schulzer also made a comment for us. And this goes back to what we said, especially Captain Norwood, about how would you reach the industry, or how would you reach young students for the industry, really high school students, to make them more aware. And personally, we actually do a program at NMEPA called Adoptaship. So typically we do it for elementary students, and we connect a vessel to a classroom through the teacher, and they do email correspondences. We send the students a big digital map, or an actual physical one, a vinyl one, that they can actually track their ship from different ports, see what they're carrying cargo-wise. And as a high school teacher, I teach seniors actually a marine science and environmental science class. And in our unit, our open oceans unit, I've decided that we are going to be pen pals with a ship from Fairfield Chemical Carriers, actually. So one of our NMEPA members, and they're going to correspond with a female on board to give them an idea about career opportunities, but then also sharing how we don't realize, and a lot of students, especially kids, K to 12, they just don't understand the shipping industry. They instantly think Amazon and air, and that's how my stuff's coming to me. They don't recognize that most of it's coming on ships. So that's just one way that I would be doing it. But I don't know if anybody else has any input on how they think we can reach high school students to make them more aware.
Going in and talking to them, just making the connections, networking, either reaching out to teachers or just promoting it on social media, because so many kids are on social media. I know Captain Kate McHugh on, I believe it's Celebrity Beyond, is a huge TikTok famous creator who is educating people and young women about how she became a captain of one of the largest cruise ships, and then just, personally traveling to schools and reaching out and connecting them with cadets at maritime academies or organizations that can get them into the maritime industry. It's all about that communication, networking, just talking with anyone who will listen or just anyone in general.
So I just want to chime in. I think it's great what you're doing, especially going in to elementary, because I think actually high school is a little too late. But I think that as a maritime community, we really need to actually reach out to the organizations and not put it all on the academies. We need to get the other organizations to go out into their communities and bring it to the students. First in high school, if they're looking for jobs, maybe some internships that get them interested in it so they kind of have ideas of where they want to go. And that's really working with the counselors that are there. But then it's reaching out to the communities and getting those parents who are in these organizations to stand up in their kids' classrooms, in that grades of like 4th to 6th years, 4th grade to 6th year, because I think it's really important. That's where they're actually impressionable and they're starting to like reach for the sky. They're thinking, oh, I could go to the moon because it's on the news, right? So we need to highlight the maritime industry through our own communities within the schools around us, as well as get the organizations to open the doors and create internships for those high school students. Because not every high school student is going to college, but that doesn't mean those high school students don't have a lot of value to bring to your organization if they even understand what it does.
Colleen or Tia, do you guys have any input on that? I don't know, maybe if there was something that stuck out to you before joining the maritime industry that kind of hooked you into wanting to be a part of it.
One thing I will add to that, and that it has been mentioned before, but it deserves to be mentioned again because it's an incredible organization, is Women Offshore. They have, forgive me, I don't really know how to pronounce. I think it's Ali Cedeno, but she's the creator and founder of it, and she's incredible for talking to anyone. She goes and there's so much outreach, and she has a mentorship program that she has had for, I believe, at least maybe a year or two. And I believe it restarts every 6 months, and you just put your name in a Google Doc and you say, are you a mentor or a mentee? And then you fill out a profile that has and you can be in high school. It doesn't matter. You can have your first engineer's license or chief's license. It doesn't matter. And you say what you're interested in learning more about, whether it's just the industry in general, unionized working, things like that. And she'll set you up with someone who she thinks can really help you out. And I think that is an incredible opportunity for anyone, especially people who aren't in the industry yet, to get real opinions on things. And so, yeah, I think that Women Offshore is 100% should be in everyone's future who's in this.
I agree, and I'm a mentor in that program. I've done it for a couple of years. I've mentored several women from overseas, internationally, to locally who just were starting in the industry and like, what do I do? What are my steps? Where do I go? To women who were not directly mentoring with me, but was given my phone number by Allie to talk to when they were kind of stuck in their career and kept getting passed over. And so it's an incredible organization that does a lot of work, but it's connecting the industry together in a way that today social media can do. But this mentorship program is all through sponsors to help kind of support it, and so it's no cost to the mentee at all, and it's a great opportunity to sort of get to work with a professional in the industry who has experience. So I would highly recommend it to anybody, including anybody interested in the industry, to say, how do I get started? Because it's not just women who are actually working in the offshore industry, it's women across every facet of the maritime industry. It's more geared to the women working on ships, but it's every facet.
And that's definitely something we'll add to our MPSEC website too. And all of the resources that have been shared, I've seen sail training on tall ships. We will definitely add that also as a resource. Any resources that anybody has along the way that you found beneficial, that worked for you, please send them to us. I will put my email address here in the chat. I send them to our editorial board, and as long as they just approve it, they vet it, we put it up on our website, just so that people have the opportunity to see all these different opportunities, whether it's jobs, other events, student information, educator information, and industry information. So it's not just one group that we're catering to. We want to bridge everybody together. And I did see that Andrew Ferguson has another comment here. What and where was each of your first experiences on the water? Oh, and I see Tia, you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to add something really
Yeah.
quick. That specifically from Great Lakes Maritime, a lot of people aren't as familiar with the school as they are with the other state academies. But specifically when I was figuring out what academy I wanted to go to, I graduated with, I believe, 9 or 10 engineers. So a much smaller school. But reach out to maritime academies in particular too. Don't be afraid. I reached out to a woman she's still there. Her name is Judy Juskovich. And she put me in contact with current cadets who were about to graduate or about to sit for license, and gave me all of the information I could need. So don't be afraid to reach out directly to the maritime academies and say like, hey, I'm thinking, or I went on Mass Maritime's training ship. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, and their summer cruise came in Port Everglades, and they did family tours, and I said, all right, well, I want to go look at your ship. I'm thinking about coming to your school. So just really don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
And a lot of academies will do cadet shadow days. So if you're concerned about the regiment side of it, you can shadow a cadet for a day or 2 days, go to the open houses, and that gives you an inside look at what classes are like, how they interact with students, how the daily life is as a 4C is what we call them at Mass Maritime. I'm pretty sure it translates through all the academies, but it shows that lifestyle. So you're not guessing, you're not, going in blindsided by it, but you can see it. And they're very open to having people come in, and everyone is so willing to connect with you and share their experience. So like Tia said, don't be afraid to reach out to them, because they will connect you with someone. And there is always someone who wants to talk about what they've done.
And I will share too, and Megan is a prime example of it for us at NMEPA. And back to what Captain Norwood said, is that these organizations exist. NMEPA, for example, we work with the maritime academies on the co-op experience side. So many of these academies, I believe all of them, I'm pretty sure, do some sort of co-op experience to give students a real perception of what it's like in a field. So Megan joined us on the education side, but she handled a lot of our Marine Operations Conference. She went into the schools in Houston. She spoke with the students. She also presented at our conference there, both on the maritime side and on the education front. We've had students who were doing international business through the maritime schools also coming aboard. So that was great, because for them, they're coming from a business perspective. So not necessarily on a vessel itself, but something that, as we've learned in the maritime industry, is very much needed. So there are so many opportunities. Again, there are so many skill sets that are needed along the way. Oh, and I see Colleen, your hand's raised.
I think if you're at all interested in going to one of the maritime academies, as Tia and Megan were talking about reaching out to them, and I think that the Sea Science Leadership Program that they have at Mass Maritime I think it's usually going into your junior or senior year of high school, you can go. I think it's a really good opportunity, because you go and you stay at the school for 4 days, so you see what it's like to live there. You get to meet other people who could potentially be interested in there. Usually you do a ship tour, you get to go to a class in some of the different majors. Like I know they usually do one for the emergency management side of things and for the marine science, safety, and environmental protection side. So you kind of get to see all the different majors and how they play into the maritime field. So it's not just so you can see, oh, or do I want to do something like go on the ship and do the engineering or the transportation side of things, or do I want to do more the marine biology side of things? So it kind of gives you a chance to see different things that are out there.
Thank you so much for that, Colleen. And thank you everybody too. So I know we're 5 minutes over our 5 o'clock end time, but I really do appreciate everybody who was able to join us today, wherever you are in the world or in the United States. I think we have some international joiners as well. And again, this was recorded, so we will send out the link in an email this evening, our time, Eastern time. So you should get that link. It'll be uploaded to YouTube. So you can easily share the link to anybody, your students, within your organizations, colleagues, anybody who you think may find it useful, especially those who are going to be our future generation seafarers. And our panelists, if anybody has any last words they'd like to share.
I just want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate being on this panel. And I want to acknowledge Captain Alexandra. She just wrote in and said, you know, it's really special to work in the industry, to work on ships, but it does come at a price, and sometimes it's very high for women. And this is just kind of leads me back to Women Offshore, where every year they have a conference and they talk about these difficult issues that face women, like, do I have a family? How can I have a family? And we have a lot of mariners that are embracing both. They are becoming a parent and they're still going out at sea. So I really think it's important to realize that there is no limitations. Only the limitations that you have are the ones you place on yourself. And there'll be people there to help support you. If one door closes, it's not the right door. Go to the next one and it'll open up. So I'm honored to be among these young professional women. They're going to do amazing things in the industry, and I'm so excited to see that. And I want to thank you, Molly, for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. And Colleen and Tia, if you have anything you'd like to share.
I would also just like to say thank you very much for having me. This was wonderful.
We are so happy you could join. And thank you to Ted for passing on your information to us.
Yes, he is a very valuable mentor in my journey. I'm sure many others. So very
that's
grateful
great
to have known him.
Oh, and then Colleen, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on this. It's nice to have a place to tell people about things like this and kind of show them another side of different industries that they can go into.
Thank you. And then Megan, any final words?
Well, thank you guys so much, everyone, for attending for our keynote. Jennifer, thank you so much. And to our 2 other panelists and Molly for moderating. This was a wonderful panel to be a part of, and I'm so glad that we were able to cover so much from both my side in marine biology to education to going out on offshore ships and kind of covering that there's a lot to do. So thank you guys so much for your wonderful input. It was amazing.
Whoops. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I did put up a slide just now about our upcoming events, too. If you're more than welcome to join either of these. We're NMEPA, MPSEC, me, Megan will be a part of. So our NMEPA annual conference is coming up. We will be aboard the Hornblower Infinity in New York City, celebrating 15 years of preserving the marine environment with our sustainable maritime best practices and educating the public. And then we also have a experiential learning and alternative education webinar this weekend, actually. It is free to join. It's a 3-hour webinar just discussing the different alternative settings to introduce marine science, and then hopefully as a little plug into the maritime industry. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.